Roman Callahan fired the only woman he trusted, and 4 hours later he was begging her to answer the phone. But this is not just a story about a mafia boss who made the wrong decision. It is about the moment trust breaks the silence that follows and the terrible realization that power cannot bring back what pride has destroyed. On a rain-soaked morning above downtown Chicago, Avery Sloan stood before a table of dangerous men, while the man she had protected for 3 years chose a folder over her word. She handed him her security card, walked into the storm, and carried with her a secret that could save his life. Stay until the end because this story reveals what loyalty costs, what betrayal exposes, and why some apologies arrive too late. Like the video and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. 4 hours earlier, before the gray security folder reached Roman Callahan's hand and before a black Cadillac began following Avery Sloan through the rain, Chicago was still waking beneath a ceiling of storm clouds. At 6:48 that morning, the private elevator opened onto the executive floor of Callahan Tower. Avery stepped out carrying 2 cups of coffee and a leather portfolio pressed beneath one arm. The floor was quiet enough for her heels to echo across the marble. Beyond the glass walls, the Chicago River cut between the buildings like a dark ribbon, and the first lights of morning trembled in the rain. Roman stood at the far end of his office with his back to the door. He had removed his suit jacket and rolled his white sleeves to his forearms. One hand rested in his pocket. The other held a phone that had gone silent several minutes earlier. He stared down at the traffic moving along Wacker Drive as if the entire city had been placed beneath him for inspection. The table was beautiful, white linen, Harrington silver, Russo crystal, 2 ivory candles burning in heavy brass holders that had belonged to Dominic's mother. Claire had placed rosemary beneath the folded napkins because her own mother used to do that when Claire was a child. The scent rose gently whenever the heat came on. Rosemary, roasted turkey butter, cinnamon, and expensive wood polish. It smelled like a family home. That was the illusion Claire had spent the entire day creating. She rested one hand against the underside of her stomach and waited. A small movement answered her. Their son had been unusually active since noon, pressing a heel beneath her ribs whenever she stood too long. Her doctor had told her it was normal, healthy, a good sign. Claire smiled down at the curve of her dress. "Your father is late," she whispered. The baby shifted again. Claire looked toward the private elevator. The doors remained closed. She had started cooking shortly after 10 that morning. By 3, her lower back had begun to ache. By 5, she had stopped sitting down because getting up again hurt more than standing. Dominic had promised he would be home by 6. At 6:15, he sent a message, running behind. "Start without me if you need to." Claire read it twice. Then she wrote back, "I will wait." She had always waited for him. During the first year of their marriage, waiting had felt romantic. Dominic was a powerful man with an empire spread across hotels, construction companies, shipping warehouses, private clubs, and political offices where people spoke his name carefully. He did not live according to ordinary schedules. Claire had known that before she married him. At least, she believed she had. She understood that business emergencies happened after midnight. She understood why his security team searched restaurants before they arrived. She understood why certain streets were avoided and why Dominic never sat with his back to a door. His world had rules. Claire had mistaken learning those rules for becoming part of his world. The elevator doors opened at 6:47. Dominic Russo stepped into the penthouse while removing a pair of black leather gloves. Snow melted across the shoulders of his dark overcoat. His hair was still damp from the weather, silver beginning to show at his temples beneath the black. At 48, Dominic carried age the way some men carried a weapon, calmly, deliberately, as proof that he had survived long enough to become dangerous. 2 members of his security team remained inside the elevator. Dominic glanced back. "That is all for tonight." One of the men hesitated. Dominic did not repeat himself. The doors closed. Claire stood near the dining room entrance, her hands folded over her stomach. "You made it." Dominic looked at her. Something softened in his face. It was subtle, but Claire saw it. She always saw it. He crossed the room and kissed her cheek. The cold from his skin lingered against hers after he pulled away. "You look beautiful." Claire touched the small pearl earring at her left ear. "You said that without looking at me." Dominic paused. Then he looked again. This time his gaze moved slowly from her face to the dark green dress and the rounded shape of her pregnancy. "You look beautiful," he repeated. His voice was lower, more convincing. Claire smiled, though the first version of the compliment remained between them. "You are 47 minutes late." 47, I had time to count. "I am sorry. Are you—" Dominic studied her. Claire immediately regretted the question, not because she feared him. She had never thought of herself as afraid of her husband. But Dominic had a way of making emotional questions feel like accusations that needed evidence. He placed his gloves on the marble entry table. "I had a meeting near the river. It ran long. On Thanksgiving, money does not know what day it is." Claire turned toward the dining room. "Neither do some husbands." Dominic followed her. His hand settled at the center of her back, warm and firm, guiding her even though she knew where she was going. "I said I was sorry. You did. And you do not believe me." Claire glanced at him. "I believe you regret that I am upset." The corner of his mouth moved. It was almost a smile. "That is a dangerous distinction." "Why? Because it means you have been thinking too much." He pulled out her chair. Claire sat carefully. The ache in her back sharpened before easing. Dominic noticed. "Is that normal? The doctor says it is." "Which doctor?" Claire looked up at him. "My doctor." "You saw Dr. Levin yesterday. You did not tell me. You were in Detroit. You could have called. I did." Dominic sat across from her and reached for the wine. Claire watched him pour a glass for himself, then water for her. "I left a message with Martin. Martin is security. He answers your phone when I am working. You are always working." Dominic placed the water beside her plate. There was no anger in his face. That was one of the things Claire had once admired most about him. Other men raised their voices when challenged. Dominic became quieter. The quieter he became, the more the room seemed to organize itself around him. "How is the baby?" he asked. "Healthy. The due date is unchanged, March 3rd, and the hospital paperwork." Claire reached for the breadbasket. "Almost finished. What is missing? The pediatrician information. A few insurance forms. The final birth registration preferences." Dominic's knife stopped against the butter. "Preferences, the name, the legal surname, emergency guardianship information." His gaze lifted. Claire felt the shift before she understood it. Small, controlled, gone almost immediately. "Our son will be a Russo." Claire spread butter across her bread. "I know." "Then what preference is there?" Claire looked at him. "I was thinking his middle name could be Harrington." Dominic leaned back slightly. The candlelight moved across his face. "Your family name is already protected. That is not why." "Then why?" "Because it was my father's name." Dominic picked up his wine glass. "It is also yours. Not anymore. You chose to change it." "Yes." He took a drink. Claire waited. Dominic set down the glass. "If you want Harrington as the middle name, we can discuss it." The phrase bothered her. "We can discuss it," as if she had requested access to one of his bank accounts, as if naming her own child required a meeting. She lowered her eyes to her plate. "I thought we were discussing it." Dominic exhaled through his nose. "Claire, I am not fighting with you. Neither am I." The turkey sat between them, carved and cooling. Claire had prepared it with lemon, garlic, sage, and too much care. She spooned potatoes onto Dominic's plate. He watched her hand. "You should not have done all this alone. I wanted to. You have staff. I did not want staff. You were on your feet all day. I am pregnant, Dominic. I am not made of glass. No. You are carrying my son." The words should have sounded protective. Instead, they landed with a weight Claire could not explain. She looked toward the window. Snow struck the glass in pale bursts. Dominic began eating. For several minutes, the only sounds were silverware against china and the distant hiss of the heating system. Claire had grown up with silence at formal tables. Her father often read contracts during breakfast. Her mother had believed feelings were private things best handled behind closed doors and never near the good china. But this silence felt different. It was not the quiet of familiarity. It was the quiet of two people measuring the distance between them. Claire took a sip of water. "How was Detroit cold?" "It is cold here. Colder." She waited. Dominic cut another piece of turkey. The redevelopment vote passed. "That is good, it is. Was Natalie there?" His fork paused. only for a second. Claire noticed because she had been watching for exactly that. Natalie handles acquisitions, he said. The meeting involved an acquisition. So she was there. Yes. Claire nodded. Dominic placed his fork down. What are you asking me? I asked if she was there? No, you asked something else using her name. Claire's fingers tightened around her napkin. Why did she call the house twice this week? She did not call the house. She called the private line. That is not the house. It rang in our kitchen. Dominic looked at her for a long moment. She was trying to reach me. I understood that. Then what is the problem? She has your number. My secure phone was being replaced, and there was no other way to reach you. Apparently not. Claire forced herself to take another bite, though she had lost her appetite. Dominic watched her chew. The tenderness returned to his voice. You do not like her. I barely know her. You do not have to know someone to dislike them. Claire set down her fork. Do you like her? Dominic smiled. This smile was different from the one he used at charity dinners. It was smaller, more private, designed to make her feel childish for asking. She is useful. That was not my question. She is very good at her job. Still not my question. The smile disappeared. Claire, I do not bring business into this home. She called this home because she needed me. The answer came too quickly. Claire felt something cold move through her chest. She looked down before he could see it. Dominic had always been skilled at choosing words. He could speak for 20 minutes in a boardroom and reveal nothing he had not intended to reveal. Yet sometimes the truth escaped in the smallest places. She needed me, not the company, not an approval, not information, me. Claire reached for her water. Dominic's phone vibrated beside his plate. He turned it over without looking at the screen. That small gesture unsettled her more than if he had answered. During the early months of their relationship, Dominic had never hidden his phone. He left it on restaurant tables. He answered calls in front of her. He introduced her to everyone. After the wedding, the habits changed slowly enough that Claire did not see them as changes. The phone began staying face down. Calls moved into other rooms. Passwords became private. Business dinners became closed meetings. When she asked, Dominic never became defensive. He became patient. He explained security. He explained risk. He explained that men with enemies did not have the luxury of ordinary privacy. Claire had accepted every explanation because each one made her feel selfish for asking. Dominic reached for her hand across the table. His thumb moved over her knuckles. You are tired. I am fine. You have not been sleeping. You know that I know everything that happens in this home. Claire looked at him. The statement was spoken gently. Still, she felt the cameras hidden in the hallways, the guards downstairs, the driver who reported every stop, the assistant who rescheduled her appointments before she approved them. I want to visit my father's house next week, she said. Dominic's hand became still over hers. In Lake Forest, yes. For what I need a reason you have not been there since the funeral. That is why I want to go. What do you need from the house? Nothing. Then why go? Claire withdrew her hand. To be there. Dominic sat back. The property is being assessed. By whom? My team. Why? For maintenance and tax planning. It is my property. It belongs to the trust. The trust belongs to my family, and I manage it for your family. Claire looked at him. There was no hostility in his expression. That made the exchange worse. Dominic spoke as if the matter had already been decided in a room Claire had never entered. My father left Gabriel Cross in charge of the older records, she said. Gabriel is 72. He is not dead. He is old, stubborn, and suspicious of anyone who was not born with the Harrington name. He was my father's closest advisor. He was your father's professional worrier. Claire almost smiled despite herself. Gabriel had once described his own role in nearly the same words. The memory faded quickly. I have not spoken to him in months. There is a reason for that. What reason he upset you after the funeral? He asked me to read the trust documents. You were grieving. He said I should understand what I owned. You did not need contracts placed in front of you while you were burying your father. Claire stared at him. Again his reasoning sounded compassionate. Again the result had been that she knew less. Dominic took another drink. Visit the house after the road's clear. I can go with a driver. Not in this weather. I did not say tonight. Then we are arguing about nothing. Claire looked at the candles. The wax had begun running down one side. Her mother used to trim wicks before lighting them. Claire had forgotten. "I am not arguing," she said. Dominic's phone vibrated again. This time he looked. The change in his face was nearly invisible. His eyes sharpened. His shoulders became still. The man sitting at the Thanksgiving table disappeared, and the man who controlled the city's most profitable unions, private clubs, and construction contracts took his place. Dominic rose. "Excuse me. Is it Natalie?" He looked down at Claire. "No." The answer was immediate. Too immediate. Dominic took the phone into the hallway. Claire remained seated. She could hear his voice, though not every word. Why was it moved silence? No, not tomorrow. Another silence. Then moved the doctor. Claire's hand stopped over her stomach. Dominic's voice dropped lower. "I said tonight." The hallway fell quiet. Claire stared at the empty doorway. "Doctor." The word did not belong in a business conversation about Detroit shipping contracts or real estate. She told herself there were countless explanations. A company physician, an employee emergency, someone injured, a donor at a hospital. Her mind produced possibilities because the alternative was a question she did not know how to ask. Dominic returned less than 3 minutes later. He did not sit. Claire looked at his coat hanging near the elevator. "What happened?" "There is an issue at the Calumet terminal." "What kind of issue? A customs release was denied. You said the redevelopment meeting was in Detroit." "It was. And now there is a customs problem in Chicago." "Yes, on Thanksgiving." Dominic walked toward the entryway. "Cargo does not celebrate holidays." Claire watched him put on his coat. "You just got here." "I know. We have not finished dinner. I can see that." The answer was colder than he intended. He noticed. Dominic closed his eyes briefly, then crossed back to her. He crouched beside her chair. This was one of the things he did well. He understood the power of lowering himself when he wanted to appear sincere. His hand settled on her knee. "Claire, listen to me. I would not leave if it were not necessary." She looked into his eyes. They were dark, controlled, almost warm. She wanted to believe him. That desire embarrassed her. "Stay," she said. The word came out more quietly than she intended. Dominic's expression changed. For one moment, Claire saw something real. Not guilt. Calculation. It passed so quickly she wondered whether she had imagined it. "Just tonight," she continued. "Let someone else handle it." "You know I cannot." "No, I know you say you cannot." Dominic stood. His patience thinned. "There are people waiting on my decision. I am waiting on you." The silence that followed felt larger than the room. Claire heard the wind press against the glass. Dominic looked at the table, at the candles, at the meal she had prepared, then at her stomach. He touched her face. "You and the baby are the reason I make these decisions." Claire turned slightly into his palm. The gesture was instinctive. Old love surviving inside new doubt. "Sometimes it feels like you make every decision except the ones that include me." Dominic's thumb stopped against her cheek. "That is not fair. Maybe not. I protect this family, I know. Do you—" Claire looked up at him. His voice had remained soft, but something had entered it. A warning. She felt it and hated herself for feeling it. Dominic bent and kissed her forehead. "I will be back before midnight. You said that last week, and I came back. At 3 a.m. I came back." He picked up his gloves. Claire wanted to ask again about Natalie. She wanted to ask who the doctor was. She wanted to ask why his assistant had recently requested copies of her prenatal records. She wanted to ask why the family attorney had stopped returning her calls directly and begun communicating through Dominic's office. Instead, she said, "Drive carefully." Dominic gave her the smile he used when he had successfully ended a conversation. "I always do." The elevator opened. One of his guards stood inside. Dominic stepped through the doors. Then he turned. "I love you." Claire looked at him. There had been a time when those words changed the temperature of her entire body. Now they reached her from a great distance. "I love you too." The doors closed. Claire remained in her chair until the elevator display showed the lobby. Only then did she breathe fully. The penthouse settled around her. Without Dominic, the rooms felt larger and emptier. The expensive furniture looked staged. The art looked selected rather than loved. The polished stone reflected the candlelight without holding any warmth. Claire looked at his plate. He had eaten less than half the meal. She rose slowly, one hand pressing into her back. The baby moved beneath her ribs. "I know," she whispered. She was not sure what she meant. Perhaps she was apologizing for the tension. Perhaps she was comforting herself. Perhaps some part of her had already begun to understand that the child inside her was the only person in the apartment who had never lied. Claire carried the plates into the kitchen. She wrapped the turkey. She placed the potatoes in glass containers. She moved with the careful rhythm of habit, restoring order to a room that had become emotionally unrecognizable. At the sink, she looked through the dark window. Her reflection floated over the city, a pregnant woman in a green dress, pearl earrings, hair pinned loosely at the base of her neck. Behind her reflection, 40 floors of air separated her from the street. Claire thought of the first time Dominic brought her to the penthouse. The rooms had been unfinished then, bare concrete, open walls, wires hanging from the ceiling. He had stood behind her with his arms around her waist and said she could make it anything she wanted. She had believed he was giving her a home. Now she wondered whether he had only been giving her a beautiful place to stay. The thought came and went. Claire pushed it away. She had been doing that for months, pushing away questions, polishing doubts until they resembled trust. She dried the last plate and reached for a cloth to wipe the marble counter. That was when she saw it. Dominic's phone. It rested beside the crystal fruit bowl connected to the charger Claire had placed there months earlier because he constantly complained that no one remembered to charge his devices. For a moment, she simply stared. Dominic did not leave his phone behind, not ever. Claire picked it up. The screen lit against her palm. A message appeared beneath Natalie Vale's name. "Tonight changes everything. Once the baby comes, there will be nothing left tying you to her." Claire stood in the warm kitchen while snow erased the city beyond the glass. Her hand remained perfectly still. Claire read the message again. "Tonight changes everything. Once the baby comes, there will be nothing left tying you to her." The words did not look emotional. They looked operational. That frightened her more than anger would have. Claire knew what a jealous message sounded like. She knew what betrayal looked like in movies: lipstick on a collar, a hotel receipt, a photograph taken in the wrong place. This was different. Natalie was not asking Dominic to leave his wife. She was discussing Claire as if Claire had already been removed. The phone dimmed in her hand. Claire touched the screen and brought the message back. Her breathing became shallow, but nothing else in her moved. For several seconds, the only sound in the kitchen was the low hum of the refrigerator and the wind pressing snow against the glass. Then the baby kicked beneath her ribs. Claire placed her free hand over the movement. "I know," she whispered. She did not know what she meant. She only knew she could not put the phone down. Dominic used a 6-digit passcode. Claire entered his birthday. The screen rejected it. She tried the date of their wedding. Wrong again. Her heart began beating harder. She looked towards the private elevator. The display still showed the lobby. Dominic had been gone less than 15 minutes. He could realize his mistake at any moment. Claire closed her eyes. She pictured his hand unlocking the phone at breakfast, in the back of the car. Beside her in bed, numbers moved through her memory. Then she remembered something he had said during their engagement. He had taken her to a private dining room above the Chicago River. Snow had been falling that night, too. After she accepted his proposal, he kissed her hand and told her he would remember the month forever because it was the month he won her trust. At the time, the sentence had sounded romantic. Now it made her skin feel cold. Claire entered the month and year of their engagement. The screen opened. For one moment, she stared at the home screen. Dominic's world was suddenly in her hand. Messages, calls, bank applications, private folders, a life arranged behind 6 numbers he had once described as proof of love. Claire opened Natalie's message thread. The first messages appeared ordinary: flight times, contract notes, hotel names, meeting schedules. Then Claire began scrolling upward. The thread continued for months, then years. She found photographs from restaurants where Dominic had claimed to be meeting investors. Natalie sat across from him in candlelight, her hand resting on the table near his. Another photograph showed them on a balcony in Miami. Dominic had told Claire he was attending a banking conference. The dates matched. Claire felt the first sharp break inside her chest. Not surprise, recognition. The late calls, the private dinners, the scent of unfamiliar perfume in his car. The way Natalie touched his sleeve. Claire had noticed every piece. She had simply refused to assemble them. She kept reading. The affair was painful, but pain became secondary when the language changed. A message from Natalie appeared from 7 weeks earlier. The transfer schedule needs to move faster. Dominic had answered. Not until the child is legally registered. Natalie replied. And Claire Dominic wrote back. She is focused on the pregnancy. She still believes the trust is protected. Claire's fingers became cold around the phone. She scrolled further. There were references to Harrington warehouses, lakefront properties, voting shares, and private holding companies she did not recognize. One message contained a document attachment. Claire opened it. The file displayed a list of assets from her father's estate. Beside each one was a column labeled Reclassification. Another column showed the name of a Russo-controlled company. A third column contained dates. Several had already passed. Claire recognized the Harrington Freight Terminal near Calumet Harbor. Her grandfather had purchased the land before Claire was born. Her father used to take her there when she was a child and point toward the cranes moving above the water. He had told her that wealth was not a number printed on paper. It was responsibility. Dominic had taken that terminal and turned it into collateral for a company Claire had never heard of. Her eyes moved down the list. Hotels, warehouses, commercial property, manufacturing shares. The house in Lake Forest. Claire stopped breathing. Her father's house had been marked for transfer review. She heard Dominic's voice from dinner. The property is being assessed. My team. He had not been protecting it. He had been preparing it. Claire placed the phone on the counter and gripped the marble edge. Nausea rose through her stomach. She closed her eyes and waited for it to pass. The baby moved again. Claire breathed through her nose, slowly, carefully. She had learned that rhythm during prenatal classes. In through the nose, hold out through the mouth. She opened her eyes. The phone remained on the counter. Nothing had changed. She picked it up again. A browser window was open behind the message application. One tab led to a private email account registered under a false name. The account was already signed in. Claire opened the inbox. There were messages from attorneys, accountants, physicians, and men identified only by initials. One subject line read Competency Framework. Another read Guardianship Sequence. Another read Birth Registration Control. Claire opened the first. The document described a private psychiatric consultation planned for December. It referred to a female subject in the 3rd trimester of pregnancy. Symptoms had already been listed. Paranoia, emotional instability, impulsive behavior, unreasonable suspicion toward spouse. Claire read the words twice. No doctor had examined her. No one had asked her how she felt. Still, a diagnosis was being built around reactions she had not yet experienced. She opened the guardianship file. Dominic's name appeared at the top. Temporary authority over financial decisions. Temporary authority over medical care. Temporary authority over the child following birth. Every temporary measure contained language allowing extension. Claire felt something inside her go quiet. The affair no longer mattered. Not in the way it had mattered 5 minutes earlier. Dominic was not preparing to leave her. He was preparing to own what remained after she was no longer allowed to speak for herself. A folder sat inside the private account. It was labeled with a date and nothing else. Claire opened it. There was one audio file. She pressed play. Dominic's voice filled the kitchen. Once the child is born, the bloodline issue resolves itself. His tone was calm, businesslike, the same tone he used when discussing zoning permits and hotel renovations. The boy becomes the connection between both family structures. Claire can be declared unable to manage her affairs. The trust moves under temporary guardianship, and temporary becomes permanent. Natalie spoke next. And what happens to her? A pause followed. Claire could hear the faint clink of glass in the recording. Then Dominic answered. She goes somewhere quiet, somewhere controlled. Natalie asked, and the child? The child stays with me. Claire pressed stop. The kitchen returned to silence. She stood beneath the warm, recessed lights with one hand around Dominic's phone and the other over their son. Her husband had discussed her disappearance with the same patience he used to order dinner. Claire looked toward the elevator again. Still the lobby. She set the phone beside her laptop and opened a kitchen drawer. At the back, beneath spare chargers and instruction manuals, was a portable drive she had purchased for pregnancy photographs. She connected it. Her first attempt to copy the message history failed. Claire forced herself not to rush. She searched the phone settings, found the connected account, and opened the export function. A progress bar appeared. 3 minutes. Claire began copying files from the private email. The financial documents, the medical report, the guardianship petition, the audio recording, every message connected to Natalie, every name, every number, every date. Her fear had not disappeared. It had changed shape. It had become attention. The portable drive blinked beside her hand. Claire opened her own phone and searched through her contacts. Gabriel Cross was saved under a name her father had chosen years earlier, Mr. Green. Jonathan Harrington had added the number himself after one of his final hospital visits. Claire remembered sitting beside his bed while rain tapped against the window. Her father had been thin then. His voice had lost strength but not authority. "Keep this number, Claire." Why? Because powerful families survive by knowing who still answers when the room is empty. She had smiled and told him he was being dramatic. He had not smiled back. Claire opened the contact. She typed one sentence. "Gabriel, I found what my father warned you about. I need help tonight." She sent it. No response came. The export reached 30%. Claire moved quickly through the apartment. She did not pack jewelry. She did not take framed photographs. She did not touch the clothes Dominic had bought for her. In the bedroom closet, she pulled out the hospital bag her doctor had insisted she prepare early. She removed 2 maternity dresses and replaced them with a folder of original documents from her father's estate. Insurance records, medical files, her passport, cash from an envelope hidden inside an old handbag, a second phone charger. She added a sweater and flat shoes. The bag looked ordinary, prepared, exactly what a nervous, pregnant woman might carry. Claire opened the nightstand drawer. Her wedding photograph rested beneath a book. She and Dominic stood outside a cathedral on State Street. Claire was laughing at someone beyond the camera. Dominic looked only at her. She had always loved the photograph because she believed it captured a private moment. Now she studied his expression. He did not look in love. He looked satisfied. Claire returned the photograph to the drawer. Her phone rang. The sound nearly stopped her heart. Gabriel Cross appeared on the screen. Claire answered immediately. "Gabriel, where are you?" His voice was rough with sleep but already alert. "At the penthouse." "Is Dominic there?" "No." "Does he know you found anything?" Noah paused. "Tell me exactly what you found." Claire looked toward the bedroom door. Messages between Dominic and Natalie Vale. Financial transfers. A psychiatric report written before any examination. A guardianship petition. An audio recording. Gabriel's breathing changed. What did the recording say? Claire pressed her hand against the bedpost. "He said I would be placed somewhere controlled. He said the baby would stay with him." Silence. Not surprise. Claire heard it. "You knew. I suspected something involving the trust. You knew. I did not know this. But you knew enough to be waiting for this call." Gabriel did not deny it. Claire closed her eyes. For 1 second, anger threatened to break through the control holding her upright. She pushed it down. "Help me leave." Gabriel's voice became precise. "Take only the hospital bag. Nothing that suggests permanent departure. Put Dominic's phone exactly where you found it. Use the service elevator to the garage level, then take the maintenance corridor to the east loading entrance." "How do you know the building your father studied every place Dominic kept you?" The sentence cut deeper than Claire expected. Gabriel continued. "A black sedan will arrive in 20 minutes. The driver's name is Samuel Brooks. He will say your father's favorite book was The Count of Monte Cristo. It was not. I know. That is how you will know it is him." Claire almost laughed. The sound never came. "Where am I going? My house, is it safe? No place connected to your family is completely safe tonight. Mine is safer than the penthouse." The drive reached 80%. Gabriel said, "Claire, listen carefully. Do not call friends. Do not call your doctor. Do not answer Dominic until you are with me. What if he notices the phone? He will. What if he comes back before I leave?" Gabriel was silent for half a second. "Then you go to the service stairwell, lock the door behind you, and call me." Claire looked at the bedroom. The room she had slept in for 2 years. The closet filled with clothes chosen for a life she no longer recognized. I understand. The export completed. Claire removed the drive and slipped it inside the inner lining of her bra. She disconnected Dominic's phone. Then she stopped. Fingerprints. The thought came from nowhere. She took a soft cloth from the kitchen drawer and wiped the screen, the edges, and the back of the phone. She returned it beside the fruit bowl, connected it to the charger, and angled it exactly as it had been. Her personal phone vibrated. A message from Gabriel. Car arriving in 6 minutes. Claire put on her coat. The hospital bag pulled against her shoulder. Before leaving, she stood in the center of the living room. The city stretched beyond the windows, beautiful and distant. Dominic had once told her that everything visible from those windows belonged to someone brave enough to take it. Claire had believed he was speaking about ambition. Now she understood he had been describing himself. She placed one hand over her stomach. "We are leaving," she said. This time she said it aloud. The service elevator opened without sound. Claire entered and pressed the garage level. As the doors closed, she saw the penthouse one final time. The dying candles, the unfinished dinner, the expensive silence. Then the doors met. In the garage, Claire followed a narrow corridor past storage rooms and utility panels. Her back ached with every step. The hospital bag felt heavier than it had upstairs. At the east loading entrance, cold air entered through the metal door. Snow swept into the alley. A black sedan waited beside a row of dumpsters. The driver stepped out. He was a broad-shouldered man in his late 50s wearing a dark wool coat. Mrs. Russo Claire remained beneath the doorway light. The man looked toward the street, then back at her. "Your father's favorite book was The Count of Monte Cristo." Claire tightened her grip on the bag. It was The Old Man and the Sea. "I know." He opened the rear door. Claire crossed the alley. Before entering, she looked up. The penthouse windows glowed near the top of the tower. From the street they looked warm, safe, almost ordinary. Claire sat inside the car. Samuel placed the bag in the trunk and pulled into the street. They moved north through the snow. For 10 minutes, neither of them spoke. Claire watched Chicago pass beyond the window. Restaurants closing after Thanksgiving dinner. Families carrying leftovers toward parked cars. A child in a red coat trying to catch snowflakes beneath a street lamp. Ordinary lives, ordinary betrayals, ordinary pain. Her phone began ringing. Dominic. Claire watched his name until the call stopped. It rang again. Then a third time. A message appeared. "Where are you?" Another followed. "Claire, answer me." Then, "Whatever you saw, I can explain." Claire read the final message twice. He did not ask what she had seen. He already knew. She turned the phone face down. Samuel glanced at her through the mirror. "Mr. Cross said not to speak unless you asked me something." Claire looked out at the dark lake. "Then do not speak." "Yes, ma'am." The car continued north. By the time they reached Lake Forest, the snow had softened. Gabriel's house stood behind old iron gates and bare oak trees. Warm light filled the windows. He waited on the front steps wearing a dark cardigan beneath his coat. 72 years had narrowed his shoulders and whitened his hair, but his eyes remained sharp. Claire stepped from the car. Gabriel looked at the hospital bag, then at her face. "How bad is it?" Claire reached inside her coat and removed the portable drive. He planned the marriage. Gabriel's expression barely changed. That was answer enough. Inside the house smelled of wood smoke, coffee, and old paper. Gabriel led Claire to the kitchen. A kettle sat on the stove. 3 locked document cases rested beside the table. Claire placed the drive between them. Gabriel did not touch it immediately. "Your father believed Dominic was interested in the Harrington Trust. Interested, he believed Dominic wanted access to the commercial holdings. And you, I believe Dominic wanted all of it." Claire removed her coat. "You let me marry him. I told your father to delay the wedding. You did not tell me." "No." Why? Gabriel looked older in the kitchen light. "Because your father asked me not to accuse a man without proof. Because you loved Dominic. Because I convinced myself the protections inside the trust were enough." Claire stared at him. "You protected me by keeping me ignorant." Gabriel lowered his eyes. Yes, the honesty did not make the betrayal smaller. Claire sat down slowly. "Show me the protections." Gabriel opened the first case. He removed a thick folder and placed it before her. At the top of the first page was her full birth name, Claire Elizabeth Harrington. Gabriel pointed to a section marked in her father's handwriting. If any spouse attempts to transfer assets outside the family bloodline, manipulate the competency of an heir, or use a minor child to gain control, all authority reverts to you. Claire read the paragraph. Then she read it again. My father expected this. He feared part of it. Did he know Dominic researched the trust before meeting me? Gabriel became still. Claire looked up. He did. We found inquiries made through several law firms. They began 18 months before Dominic was introduced to you. The room seemed to narrow. Claire placed both palms on the table. He did not meet me by accident. No, he did not fall in love with me and later see an opportunity. Gabriel said nothing. Claire answered for him. I was the opportunity. A car moved along the gravel outside. Gabriel glanced toward the window. That should be Thomas Reed. The family attorney entered carrying 2 document boxes and a leather briefcase. He removed his glasses when he saw Claire. Claire, how long have you known Thomas stopped? Gabriel closed the kitchen door behind him. Thomas placed the boxes on the table. 3 months after your father died, I received questions from a firm connected to Dominic. What questions? Thomas opened the first box. What would happen if you died? What would happen if you were declared legally incompetent? What would happen if your child became the primary bloodline beneficiary? Claire looked at the papers. You said nothing. I had suspicion, not proof. You had my name in a document beside the word death. Thomas looked away. Claire's anger arrived without heat. It was clean, useful. She turned to Gabriel. Move the original trust documents tonight. Claire, move them. She looked at Thomas. File an emergency notice freezing every Harrington transfer. That requires evidence. Claire placed the portable drive in front of him. You have it. Then she pointed toward the document boxes. I want a forensic accountant here before sunrise. Gabriel began to speak. Claire stopped him with a look. No more decisions made for my protection without me in the room. Silence settled over the kitchen. Thomas opened his briefcase and reached for his phone. Gabriel studied Claire for a long moment. Then he nodded once. At 8:07 the next morning, Maya Park sat at the kitchen table, opened her laptop and asked Claire for the first account number. Claire gave it to her. Maya entered the number without comment. She was 44 years old, compact, composed, and dressed in a charcoal sweater beneath a black wool coat. Her hair was pulled into a low knot. She had arrived carrying 2 laptops, a portable scanner, 3 encrypted drives, and the expression of someone who did not believe panic improved mathematics. The kitchen table had disappeared beneath documents. Trust agreements, corporate records, property deeds, bank statements, printouts from Dominic's private email account. Thomas sat at the far end with his glasses low on his nose, marking legal references with a blue pen. Gabriel stood near the stove drinking coffee he had forgotten to finish. Claire sat between them. She had changed out of the green dress and into black maternity pants and one of Gabriel's old gray sweaters. The sleeves covered most of her hands. She had not slept. The baby had not allowed her to forget the passing hours. He shifted whenever she leaned forward and pressed beneath her ribs whenever she sat too long. Maya looked at the first statement, then the second. Her fingers moved across the keyboard. Who controls Harrington Lakeside Hospitality? My father did, Claire said. After his death, the trust. Maya looked toward Thomas. Operational control. Thomas answered. Dominic Russo became managing trustee through the marital appointment provision. Maya returned to the screen. Did he have authority to sell assets not without approval, to pledge them as collateral, only for transactions benefiting the Harrington portfolio? Maya clicked through another file. And Russo Meridian Capital. Claire shook her head. I have never heard of it. Gabriel set down his coffee. It was incorporated in Delaware 18 months ago. Owner Laird. Maya looked at him. Everything has an owner. Gabriel handed her a folder. Maya read the first page, then the second. 3 holding companies, she said. 1 management partnership and a private investment vehicle. Thomas nodded. The final controlling interest is hidden behind nominee directors. Maya opened another window on her laptop. It is Dominic. Claire did not ask how she knew. The certainty in Maya's voice was enough. Maya displayed a transaction on the screen. The Harrington Shoreline Hotel had secured a loan for $42 million. The borrower listed on the loan was a joint venture between Harrington Lakeside Hospitality and Russo Meridian Capital. The money had not been used to renovate the hotel. It had been transferred into another company. That company purchased a controlling interest in 2 shipping warehouses near Calumet Harbor. The warehouses already belonged to a Harrington subsidiary. Claire stared at the screen. He used our hotel to borrow money. Yes, to buy property we already owned. Not exactly. Maya enlarged the ownership chart. He used Harrington property to create debt. Then a Russo company used that borrowed money to purchase another Harrington asset. The original trust still appears to own part of everything, but control moves to the company holding the debt. Claire studied the lines connecting the companies. It looked almost elegant. Circles, arrows, names separated from consequences. What happens if the loan defaults, she asked. Maya looked at her. Russo Meridian takes the hotel. The room became silent. Gabriel moved closer to the screen. So Dominic does not need the trust to approve a sale? No, Maya said. He only needs the Harrington company to fail. Claire remembered the Shoreline Hotel. Her parents had taken her there every December when she was a child. The lobby displayed a 30-foot Christmas tree beneath a painted ceiling. Her father knew every manager by name. Dominic had hosted their engagement celebration there. He had stood beneath that ceiling with one hand around Claire's waist and told the guests that the Russo and Harrington families represented the future of Chicago. He had already been using one family to consume the other. Maya opened another record. This pattern appears in at least 6 companies. Thomas leaned forward. 6 so far. She pointed to the screen. A Harrington asset guarantees a loan. A Russo-controlled company receives the benefit. The new company acquires voting rights management contracts or ownership interests from the Harrington side. Claire looked at the printed documents surrounding her. He did not steal money from one account. No, Maya said. That would be easy to detect. What did he do? Maya considered the question. He moved the walls. Claire waited. Maya turned the laptop toward her. He did not steal your house. He changed where the rooms ended until the house belonged to him. Claire looked at the diagrams again. Dominic had always admired buildings, not their beauty, their structure. He noticed entrances, exits, ownership debt, and who controlled the land beneath them. Claire had once believed it was the mind of a developer. Now she understood it was the mind of a man who entered every room by asking how it could become his. Maya continued working. The morning light grew stronger beyond the kitchen windows, but the day remained gray. Snow covered the lawn and the bare branches behind Gabriel's house. The landscape looked clean in the way only snow could make dangerous things look harmless. At 9:23, Maya discovered transfers connected to the Harrington Freight Terminal. At 9:50, she found management fees paid to a Russo consulting firm with no employees. At 10:14, she identified insurance policies naming companies Claire had never authorized. At 10:42, she found payments to a private medical foundation. Maya stopped typing. Claire. The tone changed. Claire looked up. Maya turned the screen. The payments came from Russo Meridian Capital. They were sent to a foundation called the Midwestern Center for Maternal Wellness. Claire recognized the name. My obstetrician gave me a brochure from them. Thomas removed his glasses. What kind of organization is it? A private pregnancy and mental health clinic. How much money? Maya scrolled. $200,000 over 11 months. Gabriel stepped behind her chair. Consulting fees, that is how they are labeled. Claire felt the baby press against her side. She placed her hand over the movement. Who runs it? Maya searched through the attached records. Dr. Arthur Kellerman. Claire knew the name, not from the brochure, from Dominic's phone. The unsigned psychiatric report had been prepared under Dr. Kellerman's office. Claire stood too quickly. Pain moved through her lower back. She gripped the table until it passed. Thomas rose. You need to sit. I need to know why my husband paid the doctor who planned to declare me incompetent. Maya watched her carefully. I cannot prove the purpose from this transaction alone. The report proves it. The report establishes intention. The payments establish a financial relationship. We need both. Claire lowered herself into the chair. Then use both. Maya nodded. Thomas gathered the medical documents. We can include them in the emergency filing. How soon? I need 2 hours. You said that last night. Last night I did not know we were alleging medical conspiracy. Claire met his eyes. "You are not alleging it. You are showing it." Thomas held her gaze for a moment. Then he nodded. "I will show it." Gabriel's landline rang. Everyone looked toward the hallway. Gabriel did not move immediately. The phone rang again. Few people had that number. Gabriel walked out of the kitchen. Claire heard him answer. His voice remained low. After less than a minute, he returned. The color had changed in his face. "What?" Claire asked. That was a former employee at the Harrington offices. Who? Margaret Ellis. Claire remembered Margaret. She had managed her father's calendar for nearly 20 years. Dominic dismissed her 3 months after Jonathan's funeral. What did she want? She said 3 Russo security vehicles arrived at the Harrington building before 8 this morning. Thomas stopped organizing the papers. For what purpose? They are removing files. Claire looked at the document boxes. What files? Corporate records, board minutes, trustee correspondence. Maya closed one of the windows on her computer. If those records disappear, proving the internal authorization chain becomes harder. Claire reached for her phone. Thomas spoke sharply. "Do not call Dominic. I am not calling Dominic." She found Margaret's number. The call connected after one ring. Margaret's voice trembled. "Where are you? I am safe. Tell me what you saw." 3 vehicles, 6 men, 2 attorneys from Dominic's office. They told the building manager they were conducting a security review. Did they take anything? They brought archive boxes downstairs. Where are they now? 1 vehicle left. The others are still here. Claire stood. "Can you enter my father's office?" "The locks were changed after I left. Do you still have access to the building system?" A pause. "I should not." "That is not what I asked." Margaret lowered her voice. "Yes, send Thomas every security recording from this morning. Send access logs for the archive floor. Do not confront anyone." "Claire, what is happening?" Claire looked at Dominic's financial diagram. "My husband is trying to erase the order in which he stole my family." Margaret inhaled. "What do you need from me?" "The truth preserved somewhere he cannot reach." "I understand." Claire ended the call. Thomas was already writing down an email address. Maya looked at Claire. "You know the records better than you think. My father made me spend summers in that building. Doing what? Complaining." Maya almost smiled. "Apparently you were paying attention while you complained." Claire sat again. Her phone vibrated, not Margaret. A news alert appeared on the screen. The headline filled the display. "Pregnant Harrington heiress missing after taking confidential Russo documents." Claire read it once, then again. Thomas noticed her expression. "What is it?" She placed the phone in the center of the table. Gabriel leaned over it. The article had been published 6 minutes earlier by the Chicago Financial Ledger. It described Claire as emotionally distressed following a disagreement with her husband. Sources close to the Russo family claim she had removed confidential corporate materials from the penthouse and left without informing her medical team. The article mentioned her pregnancy 4 times. It mentioned the Harrington Trust once. A quote attributed to an unnamed family associate described Claire as increasingly suspicious and confused during recent weeks. Thomas read aloud. "Dominic Russo is said to be deeply concerned for his wife and unborn child. Representatives have contacted medical professionals and law enforcement to ensure her safe return." Gabriel's jaw tightened. "He moved faster than I expected." Claire stared at the photograph beneath the headline. It showed her and Dominic leaving a charity gala the previous spring. Dominic's hand rested protectively at her back. Claire was smiling. The image made the article feel true. That was why it had been chosen. Thomas reached for his phone. "I need to contact the editor." "No," Claire said. Thomas looked at her. "We need to challenge this immediately with what the facts." "Which facts can we publish without damaging the filing?" Thomas did not answer. Claire looked at the article again. Dominic had placed her inside a story before she had the chance to speak. Pregnant, missing, emotional, confused. Every word created a room around her. If she became angry, she would confirm the story. If she remained hidden, she would confirm the story. If she appeared publicly with stolen documents, Dominic would call it paranoia. If she returned home, he would place her in the hands of the doctor he had already paid. Maya spoke quietly. He wants people to remember the accusation before they see the evidence. Claire nodded. He does not need everyone to believe him. No, he only needs the right people to hesitate. Thomas looked at the filing papers. The trustees. And a judge, Gabriel said. Claire's personal phone began ringing. A woman named Sarah Bennett appeared on the screen. Sarah had been one of Claire's closest friends at college. Claire answered. Sarah. Oh, thank God. Sarah sounded breathless. I just saw the article. Where are you? I am safe. Dominic says you left without your medication. I do not take medication. A pause. He said there was something for anxiety. He lied. Claire, I am not accusing you. I am worried. Did Dominic call you? Another pause. He asked whether you contacted me. When? About an hour ago. Claire looked at the time. Dominic had begun calling her friends before the article was published. He was not responding to a crisis. He had prepared a campaign. Sarah, did he ask you anything else? He asked whether you had seemed suspicious recently, whether you talked about people watching you. Claire remembered a lunch with Sarah 2 weeks earlier. She had mentioned the black sedan that appeared outside 3 of her appointments. Sarah had laughed and said it was probably Dominic's security. It had been Dominic's security. But now the accurate observation could be turned into a symptom. What did you tell him? That you were tired. That you were under pressure. Claire, please tell me where you are. I cannot. Why not? Because the person asking you to find me is the person I am hiding from. Sarah became silent. Claire closed her eyes. She could hear fear in her friend's breathing. Not fear of Dominic, fear of Claire. The story had already reached her. I need to go, Claire said. Please call a doctor. Claire ended the call. Her hand rested on the table. Gabriel looked at her with something close to pity. She did not want it. Put my personal phone in the safe, Claire said. Thomas frowned. You may need it. Every person connected to Dominic has that number. Every friend he contacts becomes another witness to my supposed instability. She switched the phone off. Gabriel took it. Claire picked up the prepaid phone Thomas had provided. Only 4 people had the number. Gabriel, Thomas, Maya, Samuel. The smaller contact list made the world feel both safer and more lonely. At 11:30, Margaret sent the security footage. The video showed 2 Russo attorneys entering the Harrington offices with private security officers. They carried empty boxes inside and full boxes out. Maya recorded the vehicle plates. Thomas added the footage to the filing. At 11:54, a second article appeared. This one mentioned concerns that Claire had become fixated on financial conspiracy theories after reviewing documents she did not understand. At 12:10, a local television station repeated Dominic's statement. Claire watched without sound. Dominic stood outside the Russo headquarters beside the Chicago River. Snow moved around him. Reporters called questions. His face carried exactly the right amount of strain. My wife is 6 months pregnant, he said. She is frightened and exhausted. I am asking the public to respect her privacy. I only want Claire and our son home safely. A reporter asked whether she had stolen documents. Dominic looked pained. I will not discuss accusations against my wife. He had placed the accusation while appearing too loving to repeat it. Claire watched him lower his eyes. She knew that expression. He had used it at her father's funeral. He had used it when promising Jonathan he would care for her. He had used it whenever he wanted compassion without surrendering control. Maya muted the television. He is good. Yes, Claire said. Gabriel looked toward her. You do not sound surprised? I spent 3 years believing him. Thomas completed the emergency filing at 12:36. The petition requested an immediate freeze on asset transfers and the suspension of Dominic's authority as managing trustee. He submitted it through the Harrington Trust's private review process. Claire watched the confirmation appear. Now what? The panel reviews the emergency evidence. How long? Normally 24 hours. We do not have 24 hours. I marked it as an immediate threat to the beneficiary. Claire looked at the clock. Dominic's medical report listed an evaluation date in December, but that no longer reassured her. He had moved the public attack forward. He could move everything else. At 12:52, Thomas received a call from the trust administrator. He listened without speaking. His face tightened. When the call ended, he remained still. What happened? Claire asked. One of the 3 fiduciaries has recused himself. Gabriel turned. Which one? Charles Merritt. Gabriel's expression darkened. He was appointed 2 years ago. At whose recommendation, Claire asked. Thomas looked at her. Dominic's. The answer moved through the room. Maya closed her laptop halfway. What does the recusal mean? Thomas sat down. The remaining 2 fiduciaries must agree on emergency action. And if they do not, the matter moves to a full judicial review. How long? Weeks. Claire looked at the medical payments, the public headlines, and the unfinished filing copies. Weeks meant Dominic could continue describing her before she entered a courtroom. Weeks meant doctors could be contacted. Orders could be prepared. The child could be born into a legal structure Dominic controlled. Gabriel spoke. He placed Merritt on the panel to create this exact delay. Claire remembered Dominic at dinner. Paperwork protects people. He had not been speaking about her. Her prepaid phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. Everyone looked toward it. Claire answered. "Hello," a woman spoke. "Is this Claire Harrington?" The use of her birth name caught her attention. "Yes, my name is Elena Voss. I am an attorney." "Who gave you this number?" "My client received it from someone inside the Russo security organization." Thomas held out his hand for the phone. Claire ignored him. "Who is your client?" "She will identify herself in person. I am not meeting an unidentified client." Elena paused. Then she said Natalie Vale did not create Dominic's final plan, and she no longer believes she will survive it. The kitchen became silent. Claire gripped the phone. "Where is she? At the Ashford Hotel downtown?" Thomas shook his head. Claire continued. "What does she have documents that are not on Dominic's phone? Recordings, medical correspondence, information about a judge. Which judge? My client will discuss that in person." Claire looked at Thomas. He mouthed the word, "trap." Claire turned toward the window. Snow still covered the road leading from Gabriel's house. "What time? 3. I will be there." She ended the call. Thomas stood. "No." Claire placed the phone on the table. "That was not a request. You cannot enter downtown while Dominic is looking for you. Natalie has evidence. Or Dominic has Natalie." Maya reopened her laptop. "Both can be true." Gabriel walked toward Claire. "What exactly did the attorney say?" Claire repeated the statement. Gabriel's expression changed at the mention of a judge. "Dominic has spent years cultivating the courts." Thomas gathered the filing documents. "You stay here. I can meet Natalie. She called me. She may be trying to draw you into a controlled location." Claire looked at him. "Dominic already controls the public story. He has influenced the trust panel. He paid the doctor who wrote my diagnosis. If Natalie knows which judge is involved, we need that information before he uses it. You are pregnant and have not slept." The moment the words left Thomas's mouth, he regretted them. Claire's face became still. "That sentence is already in Dominic's article." "I did not mean it that way." "Then do not use my pregnancy to remove me from decisions." Thomas lowered his voice. "I am trying to keep you alive. So was my husband." No one spoke. Claire turned to Maya. "How much of the financial analysis can you finish before 3? I can prepare a preliminary report showing fraud indicators and immediate risk. Send 1 copy to Thomas. Encrypt another for me." Thomas began to object. Claire faced him. "You will stay here and manage the trust filing. If Dominic sent Natalie as bait, losing both of us destroys the case." Gabriel nodded slowly. "She is right." Thomas looked at him. "You are encouraging this no. I am recognizing that she has already considered the risk." Claire picked up the portable drive. "I need a car Dominic does not know." Gabriel called Samuel. Claire went upstairs to change. In the guest bedroom, she stood before a mirror. The woman looking back at her had pale skin, tired eyes, and hair pulled carelessly behind her neck. She looked exactly like the woman Dominic described. Exhausted, pregnant, under pressure. Claire washed her face with cold water. She changed into dark trousers, a cream sweater, and a long black coat. She placed the portable drive inside a hidden pocket Gabriel had sewn into the lining. When she returned downstairs, Maya handed her an encrypted phone. "The preliminary report is here." Claire slipped it into her bag. Thomas stood near the door. "I contacted someone at the hotel, a former federal prosecutor who uses their conference rooms. He confirmed Elena Voss is a real attorney." "Does she represent Natalie?" "He cannot confirm that." Claire put on her gloves. Thomas lowered his voice. "If anything feels wrong, leave." Claire looked at him. Everything has felt wrong since last night. Samuel drove her south toward Chicago. Snow lined the expressway. The towers of downtown appeared gradually through the gray afternoon dark glass rising above white rooftops. Claire watched them grow larger. Her father had taught her the names of those buildings when she was a child. He knew who financed them, who owned the land, and which families had lost fortunes trying to control them. Dominic knew those stories too. That was one of the reasons Jonathan trusted him. The city respected men who understood its history. It feared men who understood how to purchase it. At the same hour, Dominic Russo sat in a private dining room overlooking the Chicago River. Judge Malcolm Crowe sat across from him. Between them rested a sealed medical file. Crowe opened it. He read the conclusion prepared by Dr. Arthur Kellerman. Acute pregnancy-related delusional disorder. Risk of harm to self. Risk of harm to unborn child. Immediate protective custody recommended. Crowe looked up. You understand that I cannot approve this without an evaluation. Dominic adjusted his cuff. The doctor will confirm the evaluation was attempted. Attempted. My wife fled before it could be completed. Crowe studied him. The newspapers say she took documents. She is confused. And if she appears before another judge with those documents, Dominic looked through the window at the river. Then the order needs to exist before she reaches one. Crowe closed the file. My brother's foundation received the final payment this morning. The judge placed one hand over the folder. When do you want her taken into custody? Dominic's phone vibrated. A message from his security chief appeared. Claire's vehicle had entered downtown. Dominic read the hotel name. The Ashford. He looked at Judge Crowe. Today, Claire arrived at the Ashford Hotel at 2:41. The building stood near Michigan Avenue, its stone entrance protected by a dark green canopy. A doorman opened the car door before Samuel could step out. Claire looked at him through the front mirror. Keep the engine running. Samuel nodded. I will stay on this block. If I do not return in 40 minutes, call Gabriel. And Mr. Reed Gabriel first. Claire entered the hotel. The lobby was quiet and expensive. Brass lamps cast warm circles over dark furniture. A fire burned behind glass near the bar. No one appeared to be watching her. That meant nothing. She approached the desk and gave Elena's name. The clerk handed her a key card. 9th floor. Claire entered the elevator alone. The doors began closing. Across the lobby, a man seated behind a newspaper lowered the page. He lifted his phone. She is here, the man said. The elevator doors closed before Claire saw him lower the newspaper. She stood alone beneath soft brass lighting as the numbers rose. 3, 4, 5. Her reflection floated across the polished metal doors. She looked calmer than she felt. The black coat concealed the portable drive and Maya's encrypted report. One hand rested against the side of her stomach, not from fear, but because the baby had begun moving again. Claire counted each kick. She had started doing that after leaving Lake Forest. 1, 2, then stillness. The elevator reached the 9th floor. The doors opened onto a quiet corridor covered in thick gray carpet. The air smelled faintly of cedar and furniture polish. No voices, no housekeeping carts, no guests. Claire stepped out. The elevator closed behind her. The silence became complete. She found suite 914 at the end of the hallway. For several seconds, she stood outside the door and listened. Nothing. She inserted the key card. The lock flashed green. Before she could turn the handle, the door opened from inside. Natalie Vale stood before her. Claire had seen Natalie at charity dinners, corporate receptions, and one private gathering at the Shoreline Hotel. In every memory, Natalie was immaculate. Dark dresses, clean lines, hair pinned perfectly. A face that revealed nothing unless she wanted it revealed. The woman in the doorway looked different. Natalie wore a gray sweater and black trousers. Her hair hung loose around her shoulders. The skin beneath her eyes was red and swollen. She had been crying. She looked behind Claire before stepping aside. Come in. Claire entered. Natalie locked the door immediately. The suite contained a sitting room, a small dining table, and windows facing the neighboring towers. Elena Voss sat near the window with a legal pad open across her knee. She was in her early 50s with short dark hair and silver-framed glasses. Elena stood. Mrs. Russo. Claire Harrington. Elena nodded once. Claire. Claire looked at Natalie. No one offered a hand. No one sat. For a moment, the three women remained where they were, each measuring the others. Natalie opened her mouth. I know there is nothing I can say that will make this easier. Claire removed her gloves. Then, do not try. Natalie lowered her eyes. Claire placed her bag on the table but kept her coat on. Start with the first lie. Natalie looked toward Elena. Elena gave a small nod. Natalie sat on the edge of the sofa. Her hands came together between her knees. I met Dominic 6 years ago. Claire took the chair opposite her. Where? At a restaurant in River North. He was negotiating the purchase of a hotel group. I represented one of the international investors. You were already involved with him. Not immediately. Claire said nothing. Natalie swallowed. It began 3 months later. How long? 2 years. The answer entered the room without drama. Claire had already seen the photographs. She had already read the messages. Hearing Natalie say it aloud did not create a new wound. It gave the old wound a voice. Natalie continued, He told me we were building something together. He said Russo Development would become the most powerful private organization in the Midwest. He said I would run the international side. And you believed him? Yes. Why? Natalie looked at her. Because he made belief feel like intelligence. Claire felt the words settle inside her. Dominic had done the same thing to her. He had never asked for blind trust. He had made trust appear sophisticated, necessary, a privilege granted only to those strong enough to understand him. Natalie drew a breath. Then he ended the relationship. When 3 months before he met your father. Claire's eyes narrowed. He ended it because of the Harrington Trust. I did not know that then. But you learned. Yes. When after your engagement? Claire leaned back. And you stayed. Natalie looked toward the carpet. He told me the marriage was strategic. He said he needed a legal connection to the Harrington bloodline. He said you understood it was an alliance. Claire's voice became quiet. You believed I knew my marriage was a transaction I wanted to. That is not the same thing. No. You watched me marry him. Natalie's hands tightened. Yes. You stood in the Shoreline ballroom and congratulated me. Yes, you knew he had chosen me because of my father's assets. Yes. Claire held her gaze. And you still helped him. Natalie did not look away this time. Yes, the honesty was ugly. It was also more useful than apology. Claire glanced toward Elena. Why is she here? Elena answered. To protect the record of this conversation. Natalie retained me 3 days ago. 3 days. Natalie looked down. I was trying to decide whether I could leave. Claire's expression did not change. People who are afraid usually decide faster. Natalie looked up. People who know Dominic understand that leaving him is not one decision. It is a series of decisions, and each one can get you killed. The room became still. Claire studied her face. Did he threaten you? Not directly. He never has to. Natalie's voice shook for the first time. He tells stories about people who disappointed him, men who moved away, women who entered treatment, partners who lost money and disappeared. He never says what he did. He lets you reach the conclusion yourself. Claire remembered dinners where Dominic mentioned former associates with mild regret. Poor judgment, a tragic accident, a sudden departure overseas. She had accepted those stories as pieces of a dangerous business world. Now, each one returned with a different shape. What changed 3 weeks ago? Claire asked. Natalie pressed her palms together. He showed me the final plan, the psychiatric order, yes. Why would that surprise you? You helped prepare the transfers. I thought he planned to remove your authority from the trust. He planned to remove me. I know that now. Claire's voice sharpened. You knew he was building a guardianship case. I knew there would be a competency challenge. I thought it would be temporary. Claire stared at her. Natalie closed her eyes. I hear how that sounds. Do you? Yes. Because you are describing the destruction of my legal identity as if the duration were the problem. Natalie opened her eyes. You were right. The answer offered no resistance. Claire hated her slightly less for that. Not enough to matter. Natalie continued. 3 weeks ago, Dominic called me to a private office near the river. Dr. Kellerman was there. So was Malcolm Crowe, the judge. Yes. What did they discuss? Your removal from the penthouse. Your medical evaluation, the timing of the guardianship petition, the hospital registration for the baby. Claire felt her hand move over her stomach. She left it there. Natalie looked at the movement. The report was already written. I found it. There is another version. Claire became still. What is different? The one on Dominic's phone lists emotional instability. The final version includes risk of harm to the child. Claire's fingers pressed into the fabric of her coat. Based on what? Nothing. Nothing. They planned to say you stopped eating, refused medical care, became suspicious of the staff, and threatened to leave Illinois. Claire thought of the Thanksgiving article. Pregnant, missing, emotionally distressed. The public story was not merely an attack. It was the foundation for the medical file. Every headline supplied a symptom. Who was supposed to confirm those claims, Claire asked. The household staff. 2 members of security, your driver, a nurse from Dr. Levin's office. My driver. He was going to say you asked whether Dominic was monitoring you. I did ask. I know, because he was monitoring me. Natalie nodded. They use true details. That is what makes the lies hold. Claire looked toward the windows. Chicago stood outside in cold gray layers. Offices, hotels, apartments. Thousands of people moving through private catastrophes no one else could see. She turned back. What happened after the meeting, Dominic dismissed the doctor and the judge. Then he told me I would leave for London once you were placed in the facility. You thought he was rewarding you. At first. What changed? Natalie reached beneath the coffee table and lifted a manila envelope. She held it in both hands but did not pass it over. I found a second set of instructions on his server. Claire waited. Natalie looked directly at her. After you were declared incompetent, the illegal transfers were going to be blamed on me. Elena remained silent beside the window. Natalie continued. Dominic planned to tell federal investigators I created the shell companies without his knowledge. He had emails prepared under my account. He had authorization records altered. He had a resignation letter written in my name. And where were you supposed to be outside the country? Convenient. Yes. Claire looked at the envelope. He planned to destroy both of us. Natalie's mouth tightened. He planned to make you unstable and me dishonest. Then he would become the only reliable person left. She extended the envelope. Claire took it. Inside were copies of emails, payment records, legal drafts, and 2 portable drives. The first document was a psychiatric evaluation signed by Dr. Arthur Kellerman. Claire's full name appeared at the top. The date of examination had been left blank. The conclusion was complete. Acute pregnancy-related psychosis. Possible threat to self, possible threat to unborn child, immediate supervised confinement recommended. Claire read the final paragraph. The patient should be separated from known sources of emotional agitation, including legal advisors, family associates, and unauthorized visitors. Claire placed the report on the table. He wanted me isolated from Gabriel and Thomas. Natalie nodded. And from anyone who could help challenge the order. Claire opened the next document. It was a guardianship petition naming Dominic as temporary guardian of Claire's person, property, and medical decisions. Another page requested emergency authority over the unborn child upon delivery. Claire read the language carefully. The child was not called a son, not a baby, not even an infant. The document referred to him as the expected minor beneficiary. She felt a wave of nausea. Elena moved toward the small kitchen area. Do you need water? No, but Claire continued reading. Payment records showed transfers from Russo Meridian Capital to the Midwestern Center for Maternal Wellness. Other payments moved through a foundation controlled by Judge Crow's brother. One document listed a private psychiatric facility in Wisconsin. Claire recognized the name from the audio recording. Somewhere quiet, somewhere controlled. How long, she asked. Natalie knew what she meant. The first petition requested 90 days, and after that it could be renewed indefinitely. Claire placed the papers down with great care. Would Dominic have visited Natalie's face changed? I do not know. Would he have brought my son? I do not know. Claire leaned forward. You sat in the room while they planned this? Yes. You know where they planned to send me? Yes. You know who they paid? Yes. Do not tell me what you do not know because you are afraid of saying it. Natalie's composure broke, only slightly. Her eyes filled, but no tears fell. He was not planning for you to come back. Claire held her gaze. The words were not new. The proof had already told her. Still, hearing them spoken by someone who had sat beside Dominic gave them weight. Claire looked at Elena. "I need an affidavit." Elena picked up her legal pad. "I have a draft." "No." Claire turned to Natalie. "She starts at the beginning. Every meeting, every payment, every instruction, every person in the room." "That could take hours," Natalie said. "Then speak faster." Natalie nodded. Elena moved to the dining table. Claire removed her coat and placed it over the back of the chair. The portable drive remained inside the hidden pocket. She sat across from Natalie. "Begin with the first time Dominic mentioned my father." Natalie inhaled. It was at his office on Wacker Drive, late October, 4 years ago. Elena began writing. For the next hour, Natalie reconstructed the architecture of the scheme. Dominic had learned about the Harrington Trust through a banking contact. He had asked Natalie to locate international firms capable of challenging bloodline restrictions. When the legal challenges failed, he changed his strategy. He began attending events where Jonathan Harrington served on the board. He donated to a children's hospital. He purchased a table at a museum fundraiser. He researched Claire's education friendships charities and past relationships. Claire listened without moving. Natalie described the first museum fundraiser where Dominic met her. Claire remembered the evening clearly. She had worn a blue dress. Dominic had stood beside a damaged 19th century painting and asked why restorers left some cracks visible. Claire had explained that restoration was not supposed to erase history. Dominic had smiled. "Then perhaps the scars should stay," he had said. Claire had thought the answer was sensitive. Now she imagined him studying her while she spoke, measuring what language would make him appear thoughtful. Natalie continued. "He knew you loved historic buildings. That is why he arranged the Lakeview Theater restoration." Claire's throat tightened. Dominic had invited her to tour the abandoned theater before their first official date. He had listened while she described the ceiling, the stained glass, the original woodwork. He had later funded the restoration. Claire had believed it proved he understood her. It had been a calculated investment. Elena looked up from her notes. "Claire, do you need a break now?" Natalie kept talking. Dominic pursued Jonathan with the same precision. Lunches, charity meetings, private conversations about Chicago history. He allowed Jonathan to mentor him. He praised the Harrington legacy while quietly mapping its weaknesses. The marriage followed, then control. First, Dominic moved routine financial mail to his office. Then he replaced Claire's driver. Then he transferred household staff. Then he persuaded her that Gabriel was too suspicious and Thomas too cautious. Every act looked reasonable alone. Together they formed a cage. At 3:26, Elena's phone vibrated. She glanced at the screen and ignored it. A minute later it vibrated again. Then Claire's prepaid phone received a message. Unknown number. She opened it. Russo legal team entered the hotel. Emergency medical order in hand. 18 minutes. Claire read the message again. She passed the phone to Natalie. Natalie's face lost color. "I know this number. Who Owen Price, Dominic's security chief, one of his senior men. Can he be trusted? No one near Dominic can be trusted completely. Why would he warn us?" Natalie looked at the message. "He contacted me after the meeting with Dr. Kellerman. What did he say, that he would not help take a pregnant woman from her home?" Claire stood. Pain moved across her lower back. She waited for it to ease. Elena gathered the documents. "We need to leave." Claire looked at Natalie. "How complete is the affidavit not complete? How much is signed?" Elena separated 12 pages. "These. Put the rest in the bag." Natalie stood. Her hands began shaking openly. "They will cover the front entrance and garage." Claire called Thomas. He answered immediately. "Where are you at the hotel? Dominic has an emergency medical order." Thomas went silent. Then his voice changed. "Do not let anyone serve you. I assumed that. The trust panel has delayed its decision. Why the 2 remaining fiduciaries disagree. It is moving to judicial review. How long? Too long." Claire looked at the documents covering the table. "I have Natalie's testimony, the final psychiatric report payment records, and proof of Crow's involvement." Thomas drew a breath. "That may be enough for an emergency injunction. Find a judge. Claire, find one." She ended the call. Elena moved toward the door. The service elevator is near the east stairwell. Natalie shook her head. Dominic's people know hotel layouts. They will cover it. Claire walked to the window. 9 floors below, vehicles moved along the street. A black sport utility vehicle stopped beneath the hotel canopy. 3 men stepped out. One carried a leather document case. Claire recognized him. Martin Shaw, Dominic's personal attorney. She checked the time. 14 minutes. Elena approached the room phone. "I can call hotel security. Dominic's order describes me as dangerous," Claire said. "Security will detain us until police arrive." Natalie moved toward the bedroom. "There is a connecting door. To another suite." "Yes." She tried the handle. Locked. Claire looked at the ceiling. "Does the hotel have banquet kitchens?" Elena nodded. "On the 3rd floor. How do the staff reach them service corridors?" Natalie opened a closet and found 2 white hotel robes. Claire stared at them. "We are not walking through the lobby in robes." "No." Natalie removed a garment bag from the closet. Inside were dark uniforms used by the hotel spa staff. Elena looked at her. "How did you know those were there? I have stayed here before. With Dominic." Natalie did not answer. Claire took one uniform. It was too narrow across the stomach. She pulled the jacket over her sweater without fastening it. Elena wore the second. Natalie kept her gray sweater and took a housekeeping cart from the service alcove outside the suite. The corridor remained empty. They placed the document bags beneath folded towels. Claire's phone vibrated again. "Thomas." She answered while walking. "I have Judge Rebecca Hale. We're Cook County Courthouse, private chambers. When 5. Claire checked the time. 3:34. "Can she issue protection before we arrive? She needs to review the evidence. We are bringing it. Dominic may already be moving toward another judge." "He is." "Claire, listen to me. If that medical order is signed by Crow Police may be required to detain you, then Judge Hale needs to see me first." They reached the service elevator. A hotel employee pushed a cart around the corner. Natalie immediately looked down. The employee glanced at them, saw uniforms and towels, then continued without interest. The elevator arrived. They entered with the cart. Claire pressed the 3rd floor. The doors began closing. A man's hand appeared between them. The doors reopened. One of Dominic's security officers stood outside. Claire recognized him from the penthouse lobby. His eyes moved across Elena, then Natalie, then Claire. For half a second, no one spoke. The officer's gaze dropped to Claire's stomach beneath the unfastened uniform. His hand moved toward his jacket. Natalie rammed the cart forward. The metal frame struck his knees. He stumbled. Elena pulled Claire from the elevator as Natalie pressed the door close button. The officer grabbed the edge of the cart. Claire shoved the towels into his face. The elevator doors closed against his arm. He released the cart. The doors met. Natalie hit the 3rd floor again. Her breathing was fast. Claire looked at her. "You planned that quickly. I have spent 6 years surviving Dominic." The elevator descended. At the 3rd floor, they entered a service hallway filled with the sounds of a banquet kitchen. Metal trays, running water, orders called over the noise. No one noticed 3 women moving past stacks of folded linens. They abandoned the cart near a storage room. Claire's back tightened again. This time, the pain held longer. She stopped beside a stainless steel counter. Natalie reached for her. Claire pulled away. "I am fine. You are not. I can walk." Another wave moved through her lower body. Claire closed her eyes and breathed. Elena checked the corridor behind them. "We have to move." Natalie extended her arm. Claire stared at it. The woman offering support had helped design the structure meant to steal her child. Claire hated the necessity of touching her. She hated Dominic more for creating it. She took Natalie's arm. They moved through the kitchen. At the rear loading dock, snow blew through an open delivery door. Trucks idled beneath concrete lights. Elena called a rideshare from a phone not connected to her legal account. A blue sedan arrived 4 minutes later. As they entered, 2 men emerged from the hotel service door. Claire ducked beneath the window. Natalie pulled the door shut. The driver glanced back. "We're to Cook County Courthouse," Elena said. "Fast." The sedan pulled into traffic. Claire looked behind them. A black vehicle entered the street. "They are following us." Elena called Thomas. Natalie opened a map on her phone. "Lower Wacker." The driver frowned. "That is not the fastest route. It is if we want to lose the vehicle behind us." Claire looked at him through the mirror. "Take Lower Wacker." He turned at the next intersection. The sedan descended beneath the city. Concrete walls closed around them. Orange lights swept across the windows. The black vehicle followed. Natalie directed the driver through 2 turns, then toward a loading exit near the river. The sedan emerged into afternoon traffic. A delivery truck entered behind them and blocked the ramp. The black vehicle disappeared. Claire released a breath. Her phone rang. "Thomas, Dominic is at Judge Hale's chambers." Claire's grip tightened. How he arrived 10 minutes ago with Martin Shaw and Dr. Kellerman, he knew. He assumed where we would go. What is he saying, that you stole private files during a psychological episode? That Natalie manipulated you? That you pose a risk to yourself and the baby? Claire looked at Natalie. Natalie's face became hard. How long until the judge hears him? She agreed to wait until 5, but Crow signed a temporary medical custody order 12 minutes ago. Claire looked at the dashboard clock. 4:22. Can Judge Hale suspend it if she sees enough evidence? The courthouse appeared ahead. Stone walls, tall windows, flags moving in the wind. The driver stopped near a side entrance. Thomas waited outside with 2 courthouse officers. Claire stepped from the car. The cold struck her face. One officer looked at the medical order on his phone, then at Thomas. "Mrs. Russo cannot enter without being placed in protective custody." Thomas held up a stamped filing. Judge Hale ordered that she be brought directly to chambers. The officer read it. Claire heard vehicles stopping behind them. She looked back. A black sport utility vehicle had pulled to the curb. Martin Shaw stepped out. 2 security officers followed. "Move," Thomas said. They entered the courthouse. The officers escorted Claire, Natalie, Elena, and Thomas through a secured corridor. At the far end, elevator doors opened. Dominic stood inside. Dr. Kellerman was beside him. Martin's assistant stood behind them with a document case. Dominic saw Claire. His eyes moved first to her face, then to Natalie. The control in his expression vanished. Only for a second, but Claire saw it. Natalie saw it too. Dominic stepped from the elevator. "You do not know what you have done," he said to Natalie. Her voice remained steady. "I know exactly what you taught me to do." Dominic turned toward Claire. The softness returned. "Claire." She stopped several feet away. "You need to come with me." "No. You are exhausted. You have been manipulated." Claire looked at Dr. Kellerman. "Did he tell you what diagnosis to write before or after he paid you?" The doctor's face tightened. Dominic moved closer. "Do not do this here. Where would you prefer the private facility in Wisconsin?" His expression changed again. The officers looked toward him. Dominic lowered his voice. "Come home. We can fix this." Claire reached inside her coat. One officer moved quickly. Thomas raised his hand. "It is evidence." Claire removed the portable drive. She held it between 2 fingers. "You do not want to fix the marriage," she said. "You want to finish the transfer." The chamber door opened. A clerk looked into the corridor. "Judge Hale is ready." Dominic's gaze remained on Claire. For the first time since she had known him, he had no private room in which to control the conversation. They entered. Judge Rebecca Hale sat behind a broad wooden desk. She wore no robe, only a dark suit, but the room organized itself around her authority. Claire sat beside Thomas. Natalie and Elena took the chairs behind them. Dominic sat across the room with Martin Shaw and Dr. Kellerman. Judge Hale looked at the documents before her. "This is not a full hearing. I am considering whether emergency protection is necessary until the parties can present complete evidence." Martin stood. "Your Honor, Mrs. Russo is experiencing a serious psychological crisis. She removed confidential corporate materials, fled her home, and placed herself and her unborn child at risk." Judge Hale looked at Claire. "Mrs. Russo, are you under medical care?" "Yes. Have you been diagnosed with the condition described in this report?" Number Dr. Kellerman shifted. Judge Hale noticed. "Doctor, have you personally examined Mrs. Russo?" He hesitated. "I attempted to arrange an evaluation." "That was not my question." "No. Have you spoken with her?" "No." Judge Hale lifted the report. "Then why is your signature attached to a diagnosis?" Dr. Kellerman looked toward Dominic. That single glance damaged him more than an answer. Thomas stood. We have emails showing the diagnosis was requested by Mr. Russo's office before any evaluation. We also have payment records connecting Mr. Russo's company to Dr. Kellerman's foundation." Martin objected. "The documents were stolen." Judge Hale looked at him. "Illegal acquisition may affect admissibility later. It does not require me to ignore evidence of immediate danger." Thomas placed Natalie's signed affidavit on the desk. "We also have testimony from a participant in the plan." Judge Hale looked toward Natalie. "You understand that you may expose yourself to criminal liability?" "Yes." "Were you involved in transferring Harrington assets?" "Yes." "Were you involved in preparing the competency challenge against Claire Harrington?" Natalie's voice tightened. "Yes." "Was the medical conclusion decided before any examination?" "Yes." "Was Judge Malcolm Crowe aware of that?" "Yes." The room became silent. Dominic looked at Natalie with a stillness that felt more dangerous than anger. Judge Hale read several pages from the affidavit. Then she listened to the recording Natalie had brought. Dominic's voice filled the chamber. "Claire becomes unstable. Natalie becomes dishonest. I become the only reliable witness left." No one moved until the recording ended. Judge Hale placed the device down. She looked at Dominic. "Mr. Russo, do you deny that is your voice?" Martin stood. "My client will not answer without proper authentication." Judge Hale turned to Dr. Kellerman. "Doctor, do you deny preparing a diagnosis without examining the patient?" He looked at Martin, then Dominic, then the floor. "I followed information provided by the spouse. That was not my question." He remained silent. Judge Hale signed the first order. "The medical custody order issued by Judge Crowe is suspended." Claire did not move. The judge signed another page. "All attempts to evaluate confined transport or medicate Claire Harrington without her informed consent are prohibited pending a full hearing." Another signature. "Dominic Russo is temporarily removed from authority over Claire Harrington's medical care financial decisions and the Harrington Legacy Trust." Dominic's face remained controlled. His right hand tightened once around the arm of his chair. Judge Hale continued. "All disputed asset transfers are frozen. No Harrington records may be removed, altered, destroyed, or transferred." Martin spoke. "Your Honor, this is an extraordinary action based on unauthenticated materials. The actions described are extraordinary." Judge Hale looked directly at Dominic. "And the evidence is sufficient to preserve the current position until tomorrow morning." She scheduled the emergency hearing for 9. Then she turned to Claire. "Mrs. Harrington, court protection will accompany you to a secure location." Claire nodded. "Thank you." Dominic stood as the judge left. The officers moved between him and Claire. He looked at her across the room. "You think one judge makes you safe?" Claire placed one hand over her child. "No." She picked up the portable drive. "The evidence does." Dominic's eyes followed her as she left the chamber. In the outer corridor, 2 men in plain dark suits waited beside Thomas. One opened a badge. "Federal Bureau of Investigation." "We have been examining Russo development for 3 years," he said. "Mrs. Harrington just gave us access to the structure we could never reach." Claire looked through the glass doors at Dominic standing inside the chamber. For the first time, Dominic was the man behind the glass. Claire stood in the courthouse corridor with the federal agent's badge still open before her. Behind the chamber doors, Dominic spoke rapidly to Martin Shaw. His hands moved once sharp and controlled, then disappeared into the pockets of his coat. Even now he was calculating. Thomas stepped beside Claire. "You do not have to speak with federal investigators tonight." Claire watched Dominic through the glass. "Yes, I do." The agents took her statement in a secured conference room. Maya joined them by video from Gabriel's house. Natalie sat at the opposite end of the table with Elena beside her. Claire described the forgotten phone, the messages, the medical report, the recording. She spoke without raising her voice. When she finished, one agent asked whether Dominic had ever threatened her directly. Claire thought of the guards, the cameras, the closed accounts the doctors chosen for her, and the husband who always called control protection. "No," she said. "He built a life where he never needed to." The full hearing began the next morning. Reporters crowded the courthouse steps before sunrise. Camera crews stood beneath umbrellas while snow melted into gray water along the street. Claire entered through a private door under court protection. She wore a navy dress and her father's watch. Her wedding ring was gone. Dominic noticed the empty space on her hand the moment she entered the courtroom. His face showed nothing. The Harrington financial records were presented first. Maya stood beside a large screen and traced the movement of money through the companies Dominic had created. She explained how Harrington hotels had been used to secure loans, how those loans purchased Harrington warehouses through Russo companies, how debt had been turned into control. Dominic's attorney called the transactions legitimate restructuring. Maya enlarged a page containing private authorization codes. The same internal code appears on every disputed transfer, she said. That code belongs to Dominic Russo's executive account. Martin rose. Anyone with access could have used it. Maya looked toward Natalie. Natalie stood. I used it, she said, at his direction. A murmur passed through the courtroom. Natalie admitted signing transfer documents. She admitted creating foreign entities. She admitted helping Dominic hide the connection between the companies. She did not ask for sympathy. When Martin accused her of lying to save herself, Elena played the recording. Dominic's voice filled the courtroom. Claire becomes unstable. Natalie becomes dishonest. I become the only reliable witness left. Dominic stared straight ahead. The next witness was Dr. Kellerman. Under oath, he admitted he had never examined Claire. He admitted Dominic's office provided the symptoms. He admitted the conclusion had been written before a meeting was scheduled. Thomas placed payment records on the screen. $200,000 had moved from a Russo company to Kellerman's foundation. The doctor's voice weakened. I believe Mr. Russo was acting out of concern for his wife. Claire watched him. Concern had been the word everyone used when they wanted to take something from her. Judge Hale turned to Dominic. Mr. Russo, do you wish to testify? Martin whispered urgently beside him. Dominic ignored the warning. He stood. On the witness stand, he looked composed again. He spoke about Claire's grief after her father died, her anxiety during pregnancy, her increasing suspicion of staff and friends. He described himself as patient, devoted, afraid for her. For several minutes, he almost sounded believable. Then Thomas approached. When did you first request information about the Harrington Trust's bloodline restrictions after my marriage? Thomas placed a document before him. The inquiry was dated 18 months before Dominic met Claire. Dominic looked at the page. His silence lasted only a few seconds. It was enough. Thomas returned to his table. Claire was called last. She placed one hand on the rail as she took the stand. The baby moved beneath her ribs. Thomas asked her to describe the marriage. Claire did not describe candlelit dinners or expensive gifts. She described facts. Dominic redirected her mail. He replaced her driver. He removed longtime Harrington employees. He selected her doctors. He discouraged contact with Gabriel. He managed every financial conversation until Claire no longer knew what belonged to her. Martin stood for cross-examination. Mrs. Harrington, you admit you entered your husband's private phone. Yes? You copied confidential documents. Yes, you fled your home in the middle of the night. Yes. While 6 months pregnant. Yes. Would you agree those were emotional decisions? Claire looked at Dominic. No. Martin paused. You were not emotional. I was terrified. The courtroom became still. Claire continued. Fear is not the absence of judgment. Sometimes it is the moment judgment becomes necessary. Martin looked toward Judge Hale. Claire kept speaking. My husband believed trust made me easy to control. He planned my marriage, my diagnosis, my disappearance, and the legal ownership of my child. She turned toward Dominic. The only thing he failed to plan was what would happen when I stopped believing him. Dominic's expression finally changed. Not anger, loss. Judge Hale issued her ruling that afternoon. Dominic was permanently removed from the Harrington Trust. Every disputed transfer was frozen. Control returned to Claire Elizabeth Harrington under the provision her father had written years earlier. The medical petition was declared fraudulent. Judge Crow and Dr. Kellerman were referred for criminal investigation. Dominic was prohibited from contacting Claire directly. When court officers approached him, he did not resist. He looked at Claire one final time. She gave him no anger to carry away. 3 months later, Claire gave birth to a son. She named him Noah Jonathan Harrington. Gabriel sat beside the hospital window while Thomas left flowers near the door. Claire held Noah against her chest and listened to his small breathing. For the first time since Thanksgiving night, she cried. 1 year later, Claire sat at the head of the Harrington boardroom. She required independent review for every major transfer. No spouse could control the trust alone. No medical claim could be used without separate evaluations. Every beneficiary would be taught exactly what they owned and who had authority over it. On Thanksgiving evening, the Lake Forest house was filled with voices. Noah slept near the fire. Gabriel raised his glass. To second chances. Claire looked around the table, then she smiled, to seeing the truth when it first appears. Outside snow gathered across the dark garden. Inside, Claire's phone rested face up beside her plate. Nothing was hidden.